So we got 10 spots, technically 8, maybe 9, 7. But yeah, we got news that a few characters are going to be added to All-Star Battle R. But because JoJo's is so diverse in its cast, I think there are a lot of characters that could be added. So here are 50. Starting with the melee fighters, we got Jobin Higashikata. He is definitely one of the main threats in Jolyne, and it was for a really long time. And I think he would work amazing in a fighting game, even more so than most of the high requested characters, because he'd be very melee in his attacks, but also he'd have elements of some type of trapper, because he could use Speed King to attack up front, but he could also set places around the stage to just keep Speed King's heat, and then it would like explode when someone touches that part of a field. And I really think that type of hybrid character that Jobin could be is really good and could be implemented into the game pretty well. Joshu Higashikata is someone who I find pretty likely to join the game as well, even though I haven't really seen many people discuss it. He did appear in Eyes of Heaven, so they already have a 3D model for him, and him and Josuke are like the only ones who really have some, so that's a really big plus for Joshu, especially for the Jolyne characters. But I really think he could do a lot with Nut King Call, like being able to use the screws to attack, or maybe even have some projectiles using the screws to just take something from the ground, unscrew it, and then throw it at the opponent. But yeah, Joshu would be really fun to have in the game. Dr. Wu is probably one of the biggest rock humans that people want in the game, and I'm pretty sure is the most requested besides a boss of an organization, and that's definitely because of his amazing personality. But also Dr. Wu would be pretty interesting to have in the game, because there are a lot of moves where he could just disintegrate and just like turn into little rock pieces like he does a lot in the manga. And he could even have a continuous damage element with him, because he sort of did something like that in the manga where he went inside a person and he did a thing. Let's just say that. Add Bōken from The Spoke Kashibi Rohan Chapter 11 Hot Summer Martha to All-Star Battle R, because he's adorable and he can just be a dog who bites and all that, but he is precious and deserves to be in the game. However, you must never forget about the true best dog in all of JoJo, and that is Iwasuke from Jolyne, who is the next character. And he's not only just a dog, but he's also a rock dog. So it would be cool to see him phasing through walls and all that in the game. Not sure how it would work in a fighting game. Maybe he could just move pretty fast and move like through the opponent sometimes to show that effect. But yeah, we definitely need Iwasuke. Diego Brando is probably one of the most likely characters to be added to the game, and his moveset is pretty obvious. I could see him turning into that half dinosaur, half person thing that he does sometimes for a lot of his moves. And he could just have some moves where he summons a dinosaur that'll do some damage to the opponent. But overall, I do think he'll definitely be added to the game, and his moveset is a bit obvious, so he's definitely getting added. Now, Omori could use his emotions and all of that to attack people, and maybe depending on the special, he uses a different emotion to attack. And Foo Fighters is someone who has a really high chance of getting to the game as well, since she's one of the main characters in Stone Ocean, and that part is currently being animated. After all, when the game comes out, Stone Ocean Batch 2 is being released. And the way her stand works can definitely fit in a fighting game, since I could see her fighting up close. But there are also a lot of ranged moves she could use, like her plankton gun thing. But yeah, there is a lot that you could do with Foo Fighters and the plankton mechanic. Gyacho could probably be a melee attacker who just uses a bunch of ice moves. But to incorporate White Album better, he could have some type of reflector that would block any projectiles that came at him for a bit, and another special could be using Gently Weeps to do some damage to an opponent for a short amount of time in just a certain area of the stage. And Gyatso could definitely work in the game, but to be honest, with only 8 spots, it is kind of unlikely. Mikitaka from Diamond is Unbreakable is a character who quite literally could have anything for his moveset, because his stand, aka his alien power, lets him do pretty much anything. So the sky is the limit when it comes to what you could do with Mikitaka, and could be in the game if All-Star Battle R already didn't have so many Part 4 characters, unfortunately, because they're all inferior to Mikitaka. J-Guile and Hanged Man could probably work in a fighting game, since all J-Guile and specifically Hanged Man really does is that he's a guy with a dagger who can only be seen in mirrors. But for a fighting game, they could probably remove the mirror thing, because that would be hard to execute in a game. So the character is literally just a guy with a dagger, and that could definitely work in All-Star Battle R. What if we just added a mongoose who just scratches people, goes right in front of them, all that, because mongoose are amazing. Anubis previously appeared in a JoJo fighting game, so they already have a basis on what Anubis could do. I guess the only problem is that Part 3 already has the most amount of characters out of any part in the game, so adding a bit more would be weird. But yeah, just have Anubis with Khan using the person thingy being controlled, and then copy and paste what you already have into All-Star Battle R, and bam, you have Anubis. Santana is a battle tendency character who could maybe work for this game, but with us having Wamu, ECDC, and cars in the game, I think adding in another Pillar Man is a bit redundant, since Santana doesn't really have much to distinguish himself from the other 3, and I guess except being a normal Pillar Man who's just average for being a Pillar Man, there isn't really much else you could do. But so Tarkus is basically just gonna be your average heavy of the game, who's just really strong and not much else, except he would fit the vampire role of healing mid battle. No, Tarkus isn't gonna be here. I don't know what I'm doing. Jack the Ripper, though, if you forgot, Jack the Ripper is an actual character in Phantom Blood and has a higher chance of being in the game than Speedwagon. And he's your average melee character, and it would be pretty funny to see Jack the Ripper in the cast of a JoJo game. That would be absolutely amazing. I mentioned Speedwagon a bit ago, and he is iconic, and people really do want to see him in the game, but to be honest, and to be more specific, I don't see him being that likely, and closer to some sort of support to Jonathan. But if you really want to add in Speedwagon, I guess he has that hat blade thing, which is cool, and he can attack people with his money or something like that. But Bruford is a character in Phantom Blood who has a high chance of getting in compared to any other Phantom Blood character, as he's like the only other one who actually fights well. And he's basically just an average warrior, except he can use his hair as a ranged weapon for some of his moves, but he can control it in many ways, kind of like Yukiko, and that would be really cool to see, especially for a Phantom Blood character, because they're all kind of average. And add Cool Shock BT to the game, because if you're removing Bao, at least add in BT, so that you have someone who's a non-JoJo character in the game, but still a character made by Araki, or we can have both of them. That would also be pretty cool as well. And we recently got Cool Shock Old BT, so the character is on everyone's mind, and it would be fun to see him in the game, like throwing rocks and doing those magic tricks and all that. It would be really cool. Stroheim is definitely a unique character to add to the game because he's quite literally just a robot by the end of battle tendency. So he would be amazing to add to All-Star Battle R because we don't have a robot. And a lot of his moves would just be a bunch of items that he could get from his body, you know, like guns and like sharp things attached to him and all of that. And Stroheim would, honestly should have been in the base game. So I think he could definitely be added to All-Star Battle R. Like, how are they gonna put all three Pillarmen but not Stroheim in the game? What? Oh wait, no, it actually does make sense. Oh, okay. So Seko and Chocolata would definitely be a duo to add to the game. But to be honest, I am kind of having a hard time for Chocolata to really do anything. Like, for Seko, I could see a lot of his moves like just coming out of the ground to attack someone and then just going from there with combos and all of that. But Chocolata would really just be standing there. Like, maybe he could have some type of special where for some time if someone jumps they take damage. But besides that, there's really nothing you could do with Green Day in a fighting game. So maybe Chocolata could just be like the only one with a hitbox and basically commands Seko the whole time, who's the one who attacks. So, you know, it's basically just like a guy with disjointed hitboxes. No, wait, yeah? So Rikil from Stone Ocean would be really cool to add to the game because he really deserves a spot and his stand could actually work really well in a fighting game. A lot of his moves could just be wisps of air attacking the opponent, which would represent his rods from his stand, and it would be really cool to see what they could do, because if you've read the part, you know that there's a lot that could be done with these rods, so let's just hope that Rikil gets in. Weka Pipo could work really similar to Gyro, how he does in the game, except that instead of using normal steel balls, he'd have his wrecking balls, so maybe they could have his attacks spread out more compared to Gyro, and possibly have some special move where the opponent can only move half as fast and can attack half as slow or something like that, because left side ataxia isn't really something you can add to the game without it being insanely broken. But if any of you can think of better ways, then just tell me in the comments. And you know what? Me! Add Jojodoss to the game. You could just use a bunch of things from Flagados like Hydro Pumps and Psychic, but if you're removing Bow and adding characters and putting characters like Shigeki in the game, you put Jojodoss in the game, Bandai. All-Star Battle R, put Jojodoss. So Magenta has a pretty low chance of being in the game since his stand is basically just an indestructible shield that he can't even move in while it's in effect. He just seems like Ringo with, you know, using a gun, but replace the amazing time aspect I have come up with that you'll find out later, just with a shield. But yeah, I really don't know what you could do with Magenta. But Sandman is someone I'd really like to see make it to the game, and I have an idea for him. Because he's one of those characters who makes sense to be in All-Star Battle, because he seems like someone who you just fight. He'd really just like fight you, but he does have his stand for long distance use, so Sandman could really be either one, and it would definitely be amazing to see someone like Sandman in the game, especially with how disrespected he was as a character. And so Blackmore is a fan favorite character, though to be honest, it would be pretty hard to implement him in a fighting game because his stand is really just like make him move anywhere when it's raining, but he could also control the rain, so maybe Bandai could do some creative liberties and stuff and make it so that whenever Blackmore is fighting, it's always raining, so that a lot of his moves could be like him teleporting around and like using the rain to attack an opponent, and all of that. So he could be some type of hit and run character, or like just like a long distance character who just teleports around and hits you. But yeah, Blackmore would be pretty hard to implement into the game that well, but I feel like if they do get Blackmore right, he could end up being really fun. And speaking of fun characters, Disco would definitely be that oddball choice for the game, but he'd still work really well. He'd just be summoning things from afar and messing with the opponent, but really couldn't do much up close. You could really be creative with Disco because whatever he could hold with him is really the only limit to what his moveset could really be. And he could have items just like teleport to the opponent, and there's just a lot you could do. It's similar to Mikitaka. So, Ringo Rodigan is another fan favorite. It's almost as if Steel Ball Run is a good part. And all of the moves that Ringo really has is just revolving around his gun, but he could be a lot of fun when you factor in his stand, Mandem. Going back 6 seconds in a fighting game could be really interesting. Like, using Mandem could either move everything back 6 seconds, or maybe just Ringo's health bar could move back how it was 6 seconds ago. So it could definitely be some type of combo breaker type of special. So yeah, Ringo would be really interesting to add to All-Star Battle R. Hot Pants is a character that definitely deserves a spot in the game, but I'm not really sure if she could actually have a good enough moveset for her character. The best I could see is her using Cream Starter to deal with damage to opponents, and maybe some moves where she could like extend her body to attack pretty quickly, like in her battle against Mike O. But I think she could definitely be a weirder pick, but it could definitely work out too. Please, Bandai, give us Flashback Man in the game. People may ask how he would have a moveset because he only appeared in like 3 panels. Dude, who cares? Just give him a gun or something. That's already like 5 Steel Ball Run characters. We just need Flashback Man in the game. That's all I need. Damo. I think Tamoki Damo is one of the most wanted characters in the game. Period. He was basically the main villain of Jojoline before we got the main villain of Jojoline, and I think Damo could really do a lot with Vitamin C. He'd be a pretty good ranged attacker because all of Vitamin C's hands are just like, there are a bunch of them and they're like stretched out. So having more characters with that range style does seem kind of nice. Just put in the 11.9% of my audience subscribe to my channel. Okay, Yasuho is kind of a toss-up on whether or not she could be a character. She's literally the deuteragonist, but it's mainly because even though she is like a major part of the part, she doesn't really have like any attacking moves at all. Her stand is really just support built, so I could see her working with Josuke in a special move of his or something like that. So even though Yasuo would be an amazing add-in for the game, it's going to be really hard. But if I had to think of something, maybe she could like throw stuff with random items that she could pull out because she did have that thing that one time. Or maybe have Paisley Park use electronic items to attack someone, like Rotom in Pokemon, and just like take over vehicles and stuff to attack someone else. Rai Mamazuku is also a character a lot of people want to see for All-Star Battle R, and I think he'd be a great inclusion for the game, since he would be pretty long-ranged because he could just poke people with his stand ability, but he could also morph his body a lot and make his hitboxes smaller. Like, I could imagine his crouching just being, like, really thin, like, almost liquidy, like, in that one time. And, yeah, it just seems like a hard-to-hit ranged attacker, which would be really fun to have in the game. Okay, so, Norisuke. Despite having his stand having no fighting abilities at all, I still think it could work. You could, like, have, like, puzzle pieces and all that, like, somehow, like, attacking the person, and maybe you could use, like, smells and all that to, like, make their health bar get lower. I'm kind of just bullshitting here, but Norisuke is a cool guy. You should have Norisuke in. But Hato. So Hato is a character I think could work pretty well in the fighting game. And no one really talks about Hato that much, especially with the Jolyne characters out there, like Damo, and Jobin, and all of that. And overall, she's kind of a forgettable character, to be honest. But she would work similar to Rai, where she'd just be like pretty long range since her stand adds a few meters to her heals. Or maybe it's more areas than just her heals. This game could have us find out if her stand ability works on more than just her heals. And she would honestly just be like a sword character of this game. That'd be pretty funny to just think about, to be honest. Alright, let's put in the like button. So everyone, smash that like button right now for Urban Gorilla, because he would be pretty interesting to have in the game. Like, he could team up with his rock animal, Do Re Mi Fa Sol La Ti Do, and most of their attacks would probably have something to do with coming from the ground. And maybe he could just be someone who lays down traps with Brainstorm and like just deal damage if someone were to step on that certain area. But yeah, I think Urban Gorilla would be really cool to add to the game. There's just, a lot you could do with, such a weird character, to be honest. Alright, let's move on to zoners, starting with Abakio. And he's basically the only main character in Golden Wind who's not in the game because Trish got announced. And like Yasuho, I think it's way more likely for Abakio to just be some type of teammate to Bruno or something along those lines. Because the best thing I could see Abakio doing is basically what I have in mind for Donatello, which you'll see soon, which is basically just random items from the past. But I'm not really sure if Abakio could do this that well, so if anyone has ideas on what Abakio could really do, you could say that in the comments. And Risotto is the leader of La Squadra, and with Prosciutto, of all characters, getting in, they'd have to include his leader, right? I think Risotto would be like a zoner who creates a bunch of metal objects inside a person, and he could also have some sort of healing effect over time like the vampires in the game to represent that one time he brought his foot back into place. And yeah, he definitely deserves to be in the game, but with them already having two Golden Wind characters, I'm not too sure, which does suck. I'd rather have Risotto rather than Prosciutto. So Weather Report is one of the main characters in Stone Ocean, and he has a big role in the part. And honestly, I'm surprised to see him not be in the initial release. He would definitely have a zoner moveset with his moves doing things like make hail in front of the opponent, or those poisonous frogs, or really anything weather related, because that is what his stand does. And yeah, especially with the Stone Ocean anime quote unquote coming out, I mean, what's going on, man? Weather Report does have a big chance of getting in, but Angalo is someone who has a stand that could really work well in this game. Maybe I'd like to see him as some type of really zony character and just have other characters to attack for him, kind of like Diego, except it could be literally anything instead of dinosaurs. Like, quite literally anything in fiction. And it would be a nice way to add in a bunch of references. And also you remove Diego's melee mechanics, and you just go hyper on the amount of fan service and all of that for Angalo. He would literally just be the fan service character, and that would be really cool to see. So Donatello Versace has a stand that's pretty weird to add to the game, but I did kind of hint on what I was thinking of with Abakio, since I could see it being something where if he attacks you with just like random objects, the game could just say that, oh, they're things from the past. But yeah, it's definitely someone who deserves to be in the game, but it would just be really hard to implement like some actual like good way. Obama is someone who was hanging out with Giorno in Stone Ocean, and if we look at the Rivals of Aether mod, we could probably see Obama using various guns and grenades and the power of America to attack his opponents. Yatsuyu would be able to use some type of zoning thing where he just use metal objects to try and attack his opponent, like just have them stick to the opponent, but in this game he's basically throwing a projectile. It means basically the same thing. And I guess it could be ranged and be the reason why Yatsuyu would be able to hit people with random pieces of metal, because his stand is just causing magnetism to the opponent. Aisho might not be that likely, mainly because his stand targets breathing of other people, so it would be kind of hard. I think one way he could work in a fighting game is if his moveset just has to do a lot with wind and tornadoes to represent Dubiwa, as the ability can't really be used that well for combat. So Haruno Higashikata could be a zoner, similar to a way that Obama could be a zoner, because Haruno does have his trusty gun, which has shown to literally one-hit KO opponents, and I imagine a move where he uses reverse P, because of the fact that he has no balls. So Haruno can't P, which obviously means that he uses reverse P, which might actually be the reasoning for a lot of Haruno's abilities, but that's for another video. Poor Tom would be absolutely annoying. He would just camp the entire time while Ozone Baby slowly damages the opponent, and it would be hilarious to see. Poor Tom is the menace. He's the menace. So Yoshikage Kira from part 8 is a character that I could really see being added to the game. Josefumi could just be an alt of Josuke, but I think that Kira is different enough from his part 4 form to be considered a brand new character, because literally all of their abilities are completely different. Kira could use his Bubble Bomb as a ranged move, and also use various sheer heart attacks to make sure the opponent doesn't get near him. And if you're gonna have 2 different Kiras, you might as well add a third one, especially when that third one is literally the best character in JoJo history. And the last spot is Toru, but if you want to know more, you should just click this video. I talk about it there.